I never expected it to end like this. It wasn't even supposed to begin like this. The house was quiet still. It was one of those cold, early mornings when the sky is dark but the world is beginning to stir. I was standing in the kitchen, sipping my coffee, trying to shake off the grogginess from the night before. I hadn't heard her leave. I was used to the silence by now, the absence of footsteps, the lack of familiar voices. She never really told me when she was leaving, and I didn't ask. We'd reached that point in our marriage where the routine felt almost mechanical. I couldn't tell you the last time we had a meaningful conversation, or when we shared anything beyond a curt hello or good night. She was out. I knew that much. Lila, my wife, had gone, just like she did most mornings, before the sun came up, with no fanfare, no goodbye. I didn't mind. I preferred it this way. The silence between us was less painful than the words we used to exchange. But today was different. I didn't know why I suddenly felt this strange unease crawling over me. It was as though the air in the house had thickened overnight. The silence felt oppressive. I shrugged it off at first, but something gnawed at me, like a feeling of something off. And then it happened. I was just about to grab my jacket and leave for work when I heard a soft knock at the door. It wasn't a typical knock. It was too precise, too deliberate. It wasn't the kind of knock you get from a delivery person or a neighbor. This was something else. I didn't think much of it at first, dismissing it as a mistake. But when I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. There, standing in front of me, was a woman, a stranger. She was tall, wearing a dark green coat and black boots, her hair pulled into a neat ponytail. She had an air of confidence about her, no hesitation in her posture, no doubt in her eyes. But what truly threw me was the letter she was holding in her hand. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, as if sizing me up, taking in my disheveled appearance and the way my mind was racing to piece together why she was here. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice unsteady. Her eyes flickered toward the letter, then back to me. "I think it's more a matter of whether you can help yourself," she said cryptically, and with that, she handed me the envelope. I took it, not fully understanding what was going on. My fingers trembled as I opened it, and inside, there was a single piece of paper. I unfolded it, reading the words that felt like a punch to the gut. "She's gone, and it's time you knew why." My mind raced. What the hell was this? Who was this woman? Why was she giving me this message? And most importantly, where was Lila? I looked up, ready to ask her all the questions that had suddenly overwhelmed me. But when I did, the woman was already walking away. Without a word, without a glance, she turned and disappeared down the street, leaving me standing there in a daze. I stepped back into the house, still holding the letter in my hands. My heart was pounding now. The quiet of the morning felt heavier. I closed the door, leaning against it, the letter still clutched in my fingers. What was going on? I glanced at the clock. I was supposed to be at work in an hour, but I knew I wasn't going anywhere until I figured this out. I walked over to the kitchen table and sat down, my eyes never leaving the letter. I had to know what it meant. I had to understand why someone, especially someone who seemed so mysterious, so deliberate, had come to my door with a message like this. I didn't want to believe it, but the words were already sinking in. Lila was gone, and I had no idea why. And yet, here was a stranger, handing me a cryptic note, as if everything I thought I knew about my life was just a lie. I ran my fingers over the paper, my thoughts spinning. The woman had said something strange. "It's time you knew why." As if there was some hidden truth I had been blind to. But what truth? The answer to that question would come sooner than I expected, and when it did, I'd wish I had never opened the door that morning. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, the letter still clutched tightly in my hands. The words danced around in my mind, each one sinking deeper into my thoughts like daggers. "She's gone, and it's time you knew why." I couldn't make sense of it. Lila, my wife, had left, but there was no warning, no sign of her intentions. How could she just disappear like this? And who was this woman? Why had she handed me this message and left without a word? I felt my pulse quicken as I sat down at the table, trying to process everything. I glanced at the clock on the wall. I had to go to work, but everything about my day felt meaningless now. Lila had been acting distant for weeks, but this was different. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The silence in the house had become unbearable. What was the message? And why now? Why not tell me herself? I reached for my phone and dialed Lila's number, my hands shaking slightly as I waited for her to pick up. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before it went to voicemail. "Hey, this is Lila," the familiar voice greeted. "Leave a message." I hung up before the beep, frustration building inside me. What was I supposed to do with this silence? The truth was, I didn't know Lila anymore. It wasn't like the first year of our marriage, where everything felt fresh and exciting. No, this was different. It was like we were two strangers living in the same house, passing by each other without truly seeing one another. Had I missed the signs? Was I so absorbed in my own routine that I failed to notice that my wife was slipping away from me? I shoved the phone into my pocket and stood up, pacing the room. I needed answers. I needed to understand what was happening. I had been blind to something that had been building for a long time, and now it felt like the whole world was closing in around me. I couldn't stand the uncertainty. Suddenly, I remembered something. A few weeks ago, I'd overheard Lila talking on the phone late at night. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the conversation caught my attention. She was speaking in hushed tones, so I couldn't make out the words, but there was one thing that stood out. She said, "I'll meet you at the usual spot." The words lingered in my mind like a bad taste. Who was she meeting? And why hadn't she told me? I tried to ignore it at the time, but now, everything seemed to be falling into place. I grabbed my coat and rushed out the door. I needed to know where she was. I needed to find out what she was hiding. My heart pounded in my chest as I drove through the empty streets, the world outside moving at a normal pace, while I was caught in a storm of confusion and fear. Where could she be? And what had this woman meant when she said, "It's time you knew why"? The drive seemed to take forever, my thoughts spiraling. I didn't know where I was going exactly, but I had to follow my gut. There had to be a place she was going. Somewhere familiar, somewhere that held the key to everything that had been happening. As I pulled up to the location, a small, rundown cafe on the outskirts of town, I noticed something strange. The lights were dimmed, and there was no one inside. The place was supposed to be open, but it looked deserted. My stomach twisted with a sense of dread. I parked the car and stepped out, the cold air hitting my face. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each step toward the cafe heavier than the last. I pushed open the door, the bell above it ringing softly as I stepped inside. The smell of stale coffee and the quiet murmur of distant conversations filled the air. There was no one behind the counter, but I could see a figure sitting in the back corner booth, partially obscured by shadows. It was Lila. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should I walk up to her, confront her about everything? I had so many questions, but I was scared of what the answers might be. Slowly, I took a step toward her, the noise of my footsteps echoing in the quiet cafe. As I got closer, I saw her face, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. She wasn't alone. Sitting across from her was the same woman who had given me the letter earlier that morning. She was smiling, laughing at something Lila had said. They were talking like old friends. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the scene before me. What was going on? Why hadn't Lila told me about this woman? And why were they meeting in secret? I stood frozen for a moment, unable to move or speak. The sight of them together felt like a betrayal, even though I didn't fully understand what was happening. Lila had been distant lately, but this was something entirely different. I felt a cold wave of panic wash over me. Before I could make a move, the woman looked up, her eyes locking onto mine. The smile vanished from her face, replaced by an expression I couldn't read, something between pity and amusement. Lila turned, following the woman's gaze. When her eyes met mine, something shifted in her expression. It wasn't shock. It wasn't guilt. It was resignation. "I didn't expect you to find us like this," Lila said softly, her voice almost empty. She didn't look surprised or angry, just tired. Tired of hiding, maybe. Tired of the life we'd built together. "What is this?" I managed to choke out, my voice breaking. "What is going on, Lila?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced at the woman across from her, then back at me. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Lila spoke. "I'm sorry, but there's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's time you knew everything." The words hung in the air between us, thick with tension, each one more suffocating than the last. Lila was sitting there, across from me, her eyes avoiding mine, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This wasn't the woman I had married. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. There she was, sitting at the same table with the stranger, her face calm, but her eyes telling a different story. She was hiding something, and I was desperate to find out what it was. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing, trying to piece together the fragments of what was unfolding before me. The woman, her name was Eva, I learned later, was still sitting there, her eyes fixed on me, studying me with an almost clinical detachment. She wasn't worried. She didn't flinch when I looked at her. It was as though she knew everything already. She was in control. Lila finally broke the silence. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I guess there's no easy way to explain it." My heart pounded in my chest, my breath shallow. "Explain what, Lila? What is all of this? Who is she? Why were you meeting in secret?" Lila didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down at her hands, her fingers tightly clasped together, as if she were trying to hold on to something, anything, to keep herself grounded. It was as though she was struggling with her own demons, the weight of whatever was going on between us threatening to break her. Eva, however, wasn't about to stay silent. She leaned forward slightly, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Lila didn't want to tell you, but you've got a right to know," she said coolly, her voice like ice. "She's been living a lie, and it's time for the truth." I stared at her, trying to process her words, my mind scrambling for a connection, a thread of logic. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. Lila took a deep breath, finally meeting my gaze. "You have to understand something, David," she began, using my full name, something she hadn't done in years. "I never meant for this to happen, but I've been living two lives." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I blinked, my brain trying to catch up with the reality of what she was saying. "Two lives? What do you mean? How long has this been going on?" Lila hesitated, glancing at Eva before answering. "It started before we even got married. I wasn't entirely honest with you when we met. You were everything I wanted, kind, loving, steady, but I wasn't ready to be the person you thought I was. I kept things from you. And then, I met Eva." I felt my stomach drop at the mention of her name. "You met her?" I said, my voice shaking. "What does she have to do with this?" Eva leaned back in her chair, watching me with an unreadable expression. "I'm part of the reason Lila wasn't honest with you," she said. "I've been involved in her life for a long time. We have a history that you don't know about, David. A history that you can't understand until you hear the full truth." I turned to Lila, my mind spinning. "Why? Why didn't you tell me any of this? Why keep it from me?" Lila's face was pale now, her eyes glassy as she struggled to find the words. "Because I was scared, David," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing you. I thought I could keep everything under control, but I couldn't. I've been living in a cage of my own making." I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, my heart pounding. The woman I loved, the woman I'd shared my life with, had been hiding something from me, something massive. I couldn't wrap my head around it. It felt like I was staring into a void, trying to make sense of a reality that didn't fit the life I thought I knew. Eva spoke again, her tone sharp, cutting through the tension. "You still don't get it, do you?" she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Lila's been keeping secrets from you because she didn't think you could handle the truth. But the truth is, you weren't the only one in her life. Not by a long shot." My heart skipped a beat. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lila closed her eyes, as if bracing herself for something. "I'm not the person you think I am," she said, her voice barely audible. "I've been living a double life. I've been seeing other people, and Eva is one of them." I felt the world tilt on its axis. The words she spoke cut through me like a blade, leaving me gasping for air. "You've been seeing other people?" I whispered, the weight of her admission almost too much to bear. Eva leaned in closer, her eyes cold and calculating. "Not just anyone, David," she said. "You weren't the only one who didn't see things clearly. Lila and we've been more than friends for a long time. And this is the part of the story you never knew about." I felt my chest tighten as I tried to process everything. My wife, my Lila, had been living a lie, and now I was being confronted with the cold, hard truth. But even as the weight of it all pressed down on me, a part of me still wasn't ready to accept it. Was this real? Was I really hearing this? Or was it some cruel game? Lila looked at me with sadness in her eyes, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, David. I never meant for you to find out like this. But I think it's time you knew. I stood there, frozen, my mind swirling with questions I didn't know how to ask. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Everything I thought I knew was unraveling in front of me, and I didn't know how to stop it. I felt like I was drowning. The air in the cafe suddenly felt too thick, too suffocating. My chest constricted with each word Lila spoke, as if the life I thought we'd built was slipping through my fingers. My mind was a blur of disbelief, denial, and confusion, but the words they kept speaking were impossible to ignore. Lila and Eva. A secret life I knew nothing about. My own wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone else, had been living in this twisted, hidden world, and I hadn't seen a single sign of it. My heart ached as I stared at the two of them across from me. Eva's cold, calculating gaze, and Lila's tear-filled eyes that seemed so far removed from the woman I had married. The silence stretched, broken only by the clinking of a distant spoon against a coffee cup. I could barely hear it, though. All I could hear was the pounding in my chest, the overwhelming thrum of confusion that filled my ears. I had so many questions, and yet I felt paralyzed, unable to form the words that would make sense of this nightmare. What do you mean? You've been seeing other people? I managed to ask, my voice hoarse and uncertain. Lila's hands, once tightly clenched in her lap, now rested on the table, trembling. She looked at me for a long moment before speaking again. David, there's so much more to this than you think. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to betray you, but I was already too far gone. I was already. She trailed off, unable to finish. Eva took over, her voice smooth, almost comforting, as if she was the one guiding me through this mess, despite being the source of much of it. It's not just about cheating, David. It's not just about lying. It's about who we are, who Lila is. She was never meant to be the person you thought she was. This whole life, this image of perfect marriage, the home, the dog, the steady routine, it was a facade, and you were part of it. I sat there, trying to process her words. I wasn't prepared for this. I had always thought of myself as a perceptive person, someone who could read people, their moods, their intentions. But Lila, she had been slipping through my fingers without me even realizing it. I don't understand, I said quietly, feeling a wave of nausea rise in my stomach. You've been living with me, in this house, for years, and all the while, you were seeing someone else? You were hiding this from me. The question hung in the air, but it was more of a statement than a question. The betrayal stung. Lila looked away, her tears threatening to spill over, but she didn't allow them to fall. I'm sorry, David. I'm so sorry. But I wasn't being fair to you. I was living a lie. I didn't want to hurt you, but I hurt you anyway, and I didn't know how to stop. Eva leaned in, her eyes sharp and calculating. And you've always been the good husband, right? The one who thinks he's got it all figured out. You don't see the cracks forming around you, and you certainly don't notice the things your wife is doing when you're not around. But now you know. Now you can see it for what it really is. I stared at her in disbelief. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This was a whole other world I'd been completely blind to. So what now? I asked, my voice barely audible. What am I supposed to do with this information? How do I even process this? Eva smiled, almost too calmly, and looked at Lila. You can't process it yet, David. Not yet. But you will. In time. You'll realize that this isn't just about Lila's secrets. It's about the life you've been living. All the things you thought you knew, they were never real. You've been living a dream. And dreams don't last forever. I felt a wave of anger flood through me. How dare you? I shot back, standing up suddenly, knocking my chair back with a loud scrape. You think this is some game? Some twisted experiment where you get to tear apart my entire life and walk away? This is my reality we're talking about. My heart was racing, and I could feel the heat of rage coursing through me. Lila's face crumpled at my outburst, her hand reaching out as if she wanted to touch me, to comfort me, but I recoiled instinctively. She flinched, her expression one of pain and regret. David, please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I never meant for it to get this far. I thought I could manage it. But I can't keep living a lie anymore. I can't keep hurting you by pretending everything's okay. Her words hit me hard, but the more I thought about them, the more I realized she wasn't just talking about me. She was talking about herself too. And Eva, who sat across from us like some cold, distant observer, seemed to be enjoying every minute of it. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. Lila wasn't in control anymore. Eva was. I sat back down, my body heavy with the weight of everything that had just been revealed. The world felt unreal, as if I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. I had no idea how to make sense of it. What could I do now? How could I fix this? David, Lila said, her voice trembling. I don't know what I want anymore. But I need to be honest with you. I can't keep pretending. This thing with Eva, it's been a part of me for longer than I care to admit. And it's not just her. It's other things too. I've been living in fear of who I really am. I looked at Eva, who had remained eerily silent during Lila's confession, her eyes still fixed on me like a hawk. And you're just okay with this? I asked her, you're okay with destroying a marriage? With pulling my life apart just to get what you want? Eva's smile remained unfazed. You're angry now, David. But you'll understand soon. The truth has a way of working itself out. You'll see. Everything happens for a reason. I shook my head, the bitter taste of betrayal rising in my throat. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The life I thought I had was a lie, and I was just beginning to see the cracks that had been there all along. I sat there, numb, as Lila and Eva continued to speak, their words blending together in a haze. It was like everything around me was suddenly distant, like I was watching a movie of my own life, but I wasn't the one making the decisions. I wasn't the one holding the reins. I felt like a ghost in my own body, as if the man I thought I was had been ripped away, leaving only the shell behind. You don't understand, Lila whispered, almost pleading now, her voice soft, fragile. I never wanted this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want you to find out like this, but I couldn't keep lying to you. Not anymore. The words felt like they were coming from a stranger, not the woman I had married. I had spent years with Lila, building a life together, thinking I knew her better than anyone. But now, everything she was saying seemed like it belonged to someone else. The woman sitting in front of me, broken and regretful, wasn't the woman I had loved. Or maybe she was, but I had just never seen the real her. Maybe she was a stranger all along. You've kept so much from me, Lila, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. How could you do this? How could you lie to me for so long? Lila looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. I didn't know how to stop. Every time I tried, it felt like I was digging myself deeper. I didn't want to lose you, David, but I couldn't keep living like this. I felt trapped, by you, by my own choices, by my own lies. I shook my head, the disbelief still thick in my chest. So what now? What do I do with this? How am I supposed to process this? This web of lies, this betrayal? Eva, who had been silent up until this point, finally spoke. Her voice was cool, calm, as if she was stating facts, not emotions. You're asking all the wrong questions, David. You're asking about how you process this, but the real question is why it happened in the first place. The truth is, Lila's been hiding from herself for so long, and so have you. You've both been pretending that everything was fine, that you were the perfect couple. But that's not the truth, and you're starting to see that now. I turned to Eva, the rage inside me bubbling over. And you? What's your part in all of this? Are you just some kind of puppet master, pulling the strings? Watching everything unravel for your own amusement? Eva's lips curled into a small smile, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. I'm not here to entertain you, David, she said, her voice dripping with an eerie calmness. I'm here to help you see the truth, the whole truth. The truth that you've been ignoring for years. Lila and I aren't the problem. The problem is that you never truly knew who she was. You never really saw her, did you? Her words stung, and I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but something inside me froze. Deep down, I knew she was right. I had been blind to something. I had been so wrapped up in what I thought was real, in the life I thought I had, that I never bothered to look deeper. I never questioned the cracks in the foundation, never noticed the subtle changes in Lila's behavior, the things that didn't quite add up. I had trusted her blindly, and that trust had shattered into pieces in front of me. Lila reached out, her hand trembling as she tried to make contact. David, please, she whispered. Don't do this. Don't hate me. I recoiled from her touch, the anger rising again. How can I not hate you? I said through gritted teeth. You've destroyed everything. My trust, my life, my marriage. You've been living a lie for years, and now I'm just supposed to accept it? Tears spilled from Lila's eyes as she pulled her hand back, wiping them away. I don't expect you to forgive me, David. I don't expect you to forget. But I need you to understand, this wasn't easy for me either. I've been torn apart by this. Every day that went by, every time I saw you, I felt like I was sinking further into my own lies. And I didn't know how to climb out. Her voice cracked at the end, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered all the moments she had stolen from me. All the years I had spent living in a fantasy. The trust one had given her. The love I had poured into our relationship. All of it was built on a lie. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I need to get out of here, I said, my voice cold. I turned to walk out, but Lila called after me, her voice breaking. David, please. I know I've made a mess of everything, but please don't walk away from me. We need to talk about this. I stopped at the door, my hand on the handle, and turned to face her one last time. I don't know if I can talk about this anymore, Lila. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. You've shattered everything I thought we had, and I don't know if it can ever be repaired. I opened the door and stepped outside, the cool night air hitting me like a wave. I needed to clear my head, to figure out what to do next. I didn't know how to process the truth, how to move forward from here. I had so many questions, but they all seemed insignificant now. The truth was, I had no idea who Lila was anymore. The woman I had married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I walked down the empty street, the weight of everything pressing down on me, and I knew one thing for certain. My life was never going to be the same. The truth had come crashing down, and I was left to pick up the pieces. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that cafe, with Lila's tear-streaked face and Eva's cold, calculating gaze. I needed space, time to breathe, to think, and to figure out just how deep the lies went. My head felt like it was going to explode, the anger, confusion, and betrayal churning inside me. I walked aimlessly, not caring about where I was going, just needing to get as far away as possible from the woman I thought I knew. I don't even remember how long I walked, but eventually, I found myself at the edge of the park, a place I used to visit as a kid. It was quiet now, the streets empty, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the wind. I sat on one of the benches, my hands gripping the edge as I tried to steady my breathing. I closed my eyes, hoping for some clarity, some answer that would make sense of this mess. But nothing came. My mind kept circling back to the same question. How did I not see it? How had I missed all the signs that now seemed so obvious? I thought about Lila's confession, her admission that she had been living a lie for years. But then Eva's words came back to me. It's not just about Lila's secrets. It's about the life you've been living. All the things you thought you knew, they were never real. What did she mean by that? What was she trying to say? It felt like she was pushing me to question everything, to look at the very foundation of my life and realize that it was all built on a lie. I stood up suddenly, the weight of her words pressing on me like 1,000 pounds. I wasn't just questioning Lila's actions. I was questioning everything. My life, my relationship, my reality. All of it had been shattered in one conversation, one confession. I needed answers. But where could I go from here? How could I move forward when the ground beneath me had crumbled? I took out my phone, the screen lighting up with a new message from Lila. I hesitated, staring at it for a moment before opening it. Please, David. I know you're angry. I don't blame you. But we need to talk. Please, don't walk away from everything we've built. I can't lose you. My finger hovered over the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. Could I really face her again? Could I really sit down with her and try to understand why she had done what she did? A part of me wanted to throw my phone in the trash, to block her out and never speak to her again. But another part of me, the part that still cared for her, wanted to hear her out. I needed to know what had driven her to this point, what had pushed her to live this double life. I didn't reply. Instead, I shoved the phone back in my pocket and started walking again, trying to outrun the thoughts that kept spiraling out of control. But no matter how fast I walked, they followed me, gnawing at my mind, twisting my gut. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about Lila's affair. There was something darker at play here, something I wasn't seeing. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Eva was right. There was something wrong with the life I thought I had. And as much as I hated to admit it, I wasn't sure if I could ever go back to it. The trust had been broken, the illusion shattered, and now I was left with the pieces of a life I didn't recognize. As the hours passed, I found myself in front of our house. The place that had once felt like home now felt foreign. I stood outside for a long moment, staring at the door, my chest tight with a mix of anger and confusion. Should I go in? Should I face her? Or should I just leave, walk away from everything, and start over? Before I could make up my mind, the door opened. Lila stepped out, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. She looked like a stranger, but beneath the surface, I could still see the woman I had married, the woman I had loved. She took a few hesitant steps toward me, her eyes full of regret. "David," she said softly, her voice shaking. "Please, let me explain. I know I've hurt you. I know I've betrayed you in ways I can't even begin to apologize for. But I need you to understand. I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this to happen." I wanted to turn away, to walk right past her and never look back, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the years we'd spent together, the memories we'd shared. Maybe it was the pain in her voice, the way she was standing there, vulnerable and broken, as if she were waiting for me to save her. "I don't know if I can ever understand, Lila," I said, my voice rough. "You've kept so much from me. You've lied to me for years, and now everything's falling apart. How am I supposed to move past this? How am I supposed to believe anything you say from now on?" Lila swallowed hard, her face crumpling with emotion. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to forget what I've done. But I need you to know, I never stopped loving you, David. Even when everything else was falling apart, I never stopped loving you." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to take her in my arms and tell her that everything would be okay. But the other part of me, the part that had been betrayed, was screaming for me to run, to cut my losses and leave before things got worse. "You've already lost me, Lila," I said, my voice cold. "You've lost me in ways you'll never be able to fix. Maybe it's time to let go." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears, but I turned away, unable to stand there any longer. I walked down the driveway, leaving her standing in the doorway, her words echoing in my mind. I could still feel the weight of her confession, the heaviness of her betrayal pressing down on me. But the truth was, I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know how to fix us. I had no idea where I was going. My feet carried me forward with a purpose I couldn't understand, but my mind was blank, consumed by the weight of everything that had happened in the last few days. Lila's face lingered in my thoughts, her eyes full of regret, but that only made the pain worse. I didn't want to feel sympathy for her. I didn't want to feel anything but anger, betrayal, and the suffocating need for revenge. But part of me still wanted to believe her. Part of me still wanted to think that the woman I had loved was somehow in there, hiding beneath the wreckage of her lies. I stopped at a park bench, my legs giving way beneath me. I sat down heavily, not caring who saw me, not caring about anything at all. My heart was fractured, my mind spinning, and yet, I felt oddly detached from it all. It was like I was watching my own life unfold from a distance, unable to do anything but observe as everything I had built crumbled around me. I glanced around at the empty park, the quiet night settling over the world, but I couldn't find any peace. I could still hear Eva's voice, cold and calculated, ringing in my ears. "You've been living a lie, David. All the things you thought you knew, they were never real." Her words echoed in my mind, like a broken record, and I couldn't escape them. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I didn't. I just sat there, my hands shaking as I tried to sort through the chaos of my emotions. It wasn't just Lila's betrayal that stung. It was everything. The foundation of my life had been cracked, and I didn't know how to rebuild it. Every moment I had spent with her now felt tainted, every memory overshadowed by the truth. I had been a fool to think that love and loyalty were enough. Lila had proven that the world was far more complex than I had ever realized. But it wasn't just Lila who had shattered my world, it was Eva too. She had been the catalyst, the one who pushed everything to the breaking point. She wasn't just some distant figure in Lila's life. She was the embodiment of everything I feared. Someone who had seen the cracks in my marriage long before I did, and was now relishing in the destruction of it. I stood up, my legs stiff from sitting for so long, and walked aimlessly through the park. I had to do something. I had to confront this head-on. I couldn't keep running from it. But as I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. More than I even knew. I pulled my phone out again, staring at the blank screen. No new messages. The silence was unbearable. I needed answers. And for some sick reason, I knew exactly where to go to get them. It had been a few days since I last saw Eva, the woman who had become a shadow in my life, the one who had been the puppet master behind Lila's secrets. I knew she wasn't just some bystander in this mess. She was the one pulling the strings, pushing Lila to her limits, feeding her lies and manipulating her every step of the way. I didn't trust her. I couldn't trust her. But if there was anyone who held the key to the whole puzzle, it was Eva. I had to see her again. I had to confront her. I didn't think. I didn't overthink. I just acted. I drove to the address I had found on a scrap of paper tucked inside one of the letters she'd left me. The building was old, abandoned-looking, with a faded sign hanging crookedly above the door. It looked like the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but what I saw didn't make me feel any better. The door was unlocked, and when I pushed it open, the air inside was thick with dust, the smell of decay hanging in the air. It was dark, too dark. The only light came from a single flickering bulb overhead, casting long, distorted shadows across the room. I felt like I was stepping into a different world, one that was entirely separate from the life I had known. I stepped inside, and the door creaked shut behind me. I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. "Eva," I called, my voice echoing in the emptiness. A voice answered, but it wasn't Eva's. It was someone else's, a man's. "I've been waiting for you," the voice said, calm and cold. I turned around, my heart pounding in my chest. The man standing in front of me was tall, dressed in all black, with dark eyes that studied me carefully. His expression was unreadable, like he was trying to gauge what I would do next. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. The man didn't answer immediately. He just took a step closer, his eyes narrowing as he looked me over. "You don't know the half of it," he said finally. "But I think you're about to find out." I stared at him, confusion and fear mixing in the pit of my stomach. I didn't know what to make of this situation. I had come here looking for answers, but now I was getting more than I bargained for. The man stepped aside, revealing Eva, who was sitting casually on an old leather chair, her legs crossed and her arms folded. "I told you he'd come," Eva said with a smirk, her voice dripping with amusement. "He wants answers. But the truth isn't as simple as you think, David." I stood frozen in the doorway, the weight of the moment sinking in. What had I walked into? What was this game they were playing, and why was I the one who was being dragged into it? "Eva," I said, my voice low but firm. "What is all of this? What do you want from me?" She leaned forward, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "What do I want? I don't want anything from you, David. You're the one who came looking for answers. But you're not ready for the truth. None of you are." My blood ran cold. This wasn't about Lila. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about something much bigger. Something I wasn't prepared to face. "I'm not leaving until you tell me everything," I said, my voice shaking, but with a resolve I didn't even know I had. Eva's smirk faded, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something dangerous in her eyes. "You'll regret that, David," she said quietly. "But I suppose it's too late to turn back now." I stood there, the silence between us hanging like a thick fog. The man in black, whose presence made the air feel heavier, remained motionless, watching me as if he could predict my every move. But it wasn't him I was focused on. It was Eva, the woman who had caused this chain of destruction, the one who had manipulated and pulled the strings. Her eyes, once cold and calculating, now held something else, something I couldn't place. It was almost as if she were testing me. "You've got to stop, David," Eva said, her voice quieter now, no longer mocking. "You've been running, trying to outrun the truth, trying to control the pieces of this puzzle. But some things, some truths, are bigger than you or me." I was about to open my mouth to respond, but she cut me off, raising her hand. "No. Listen, you've been caught in a trap. But the trap was never about me or Lila. It was about the life you thought you had, about the version of yourself you thought you knew. Everything you've been through, every twist and turn, has led you to this point. And now it's up to you whether you stay trapped in the past or step forward into something new." I stared at her, stunned. She was right. I had been clinging to the past, to a version of Lila and me that no longer existed. I had been holding on to an image of my marriage that had already crumbled beneath me, and I had let fear control my every move. But now, Standing here in the middle of this dark room, I felt something stir inside me, a spark of understanding. I don't know what you want from me, I said, my voice hoarse. But I can't keep going in circles. I can't keep pretending I don't see what's in front of me. Eva stood up, walking toward me slowly, her eyes meeting mine. I don't want anything from you, David. I want you to see that the only thing standing in your way is the belief that things should be different. You need to accept what happened, let it go, and move forward. The words hit me harder than I expected. They weren't just advice, they were a revelation. Everything I had been holding on to, the anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak, was nothing more than a chain, keeping me locked in the past. I had been so consumed by the way things should have been that I couldn't see the way forward. And what about Lila? I asked, a lump forming in my throat. What about her? What am I supposed to do with all this pain? How do I just forgive her? Eva's expression softened, and for the first time, she didn't look like a villain. She looked like someone who had been through the fire and had come out the other side. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, David. It doesn't mean you have to go back to how things were. But it does mean releasing the hold the past has on you. If you stay in this place, angry, bitter, you'll never move forward. You'll never find peace. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, though it was still mixed with uncertainty. There was no manual for this, no clear path to follow. But I had been given the chance to choose how I would react, how I would heal, and how I would rebuild my life from the wreckage of everything that had happened. Lila's waiting for you, Eva said quietly, stepping back and giving me space. You don't have to do this alone. You've been through hell, but now you have the chance to rewrite your story. I turned, my gaze flickering toward the door. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but it was mine to walk. The anger, the resentment, it didn't have to define me anymore. I stepped out of the dark, abandoned building, my feet carrying me back toward the light. And there, in the distance, was Lila. She was standing near the entrance of the park, her face a mixture of hope and fear. The tension between us had been thick for so long, but now, as I walked toward her, I saw a flicker of something new in her eyes, something that had been buried beneath the layers of lies and secrets. Regret, yes, but also a deep, aching desire for redemption. I stopped in front of her, unsure of what to say, but she spoke first. I know I've hurt you, David. I know I've broken everything we had, she said, her voice trembling. But I want to try. I want to rebuild. I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know I'm ready to change, to be the person you need me to be. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of the past crushing me. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing. I wasn't alone anymore. I don't know if I can forgive you right away, I said quietly, but I'm willing to try. We both have a lot of work to do, but I think we can figure it out together. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of hope, of a future that, while uncertain, still held the possibility of something beautiful. We didn't have a perfect ending, but we had something better, an honest chance to rebuild, piece by piece, from the wreckage. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it was possible. We walked toward the future, side by side, knowing that the road ahead would be long, but it would be ours to travel. And in the end, that was enough.